Welcome back to the Real Estate Investing Fundamentals Masterclass. So far, we've covered mindset, deal flow, estimating repairs, evaluating deals, and financing. And today we're going to be talking about rehabbing. This is, when you're at this point, it's game time. You're not just a player in the game. You're not just studying the game. You're actually the quarterback on the field holding the ball. And depending on how you've handled the project and how you've handled things up to this point is really going to determine, are you going to be making a touchdown or are you going to get sacked? So I say that hoping that you realize this is a serious business. Real estate investing is a serious business. And the good news is if you did everything you were supposed to be doing up to this point, it can be very rewarding. If you got your itemized bid, your itemized written bid from your contractor, if you analyze the deal the right way and you have the property financed the right way, and you have multiple exit strategies, you've set yourself up for success. But you're not done yet because the game clock is still ticking. You still need to stay focused on the project and see it all the way through. And this part of the game can be very, very fun. And if you're prepared, it probably will be very fun. But you still have to continue to play the game and see the project all the way through to the end. Now, just a couple refresher points, and this, a lot of this goes back to the estimating repairs section. Some factors that you have to consider before you're starting your rehab project, which includes, are you in a buyer's market or a seller's market? Is the rehab, is it for a flip? Or is it for a rental? And really, when you're considering these things, you're considering your primary exit strategy. You should have multiple exit strategies, but we're really considering your primary exit strategy. Is it for a flip or a rental? Is it a short-term or long-term deal? Is it a high-end or a low-end property? As you're determining, asking yourself and going over these questions, it really plays into what your rehab project looks like. And these are things that you should, at least at this point, have already figured out. Also doing the math and going through the itemized list, your entire budget, the entire property, itemized list of every single thing that the house has, and just figuring out what must you do, what should you do, and then what can you do. And the can is really just those wow factors. Just kind of diving a little bit deeper on that, but we talk about this in the estimating repair section. The what must you do? These are things that you have to do. Like if the floor, say carpet, if it has carpet flooring and it is just reeks of urine because the previous owner had dogs that lived in the house and it just smells, they never cleaned it, and it has these huge, massive stains, you must replace that. It doesn't matter if it's a high-end flip, a low-end flip. It doesn't matter if it's high-end rental, low-end rental. You must replace that. You cannot keep that. Now, if it's a older tile, but in really good condition, as far as it's older, it's outdated, but it's in good condition, and the home is a rental. It's going to be a rental for you, and it's maybe medium price point, maybe a little bit lower. Must you replace that? No, you probably do not have to replace that because it's in good condition. It's for a rental. Now, should you? Maybe you should. It really depends on the comps. And then what can you do? The can is, these are the wow factors that you can put into the home, and ultimately maybe it helps it sell faster, or maybe it helps it sell for a higher price. And that really goes into the math too, when you're considering the what should you do and what can you do. Must, you got to do that stuff anyway, but the what should and what can you do, some of those decisions really come down to, hey, is this going to help me get a much higher ROI on whatever that investment is? Say the carpet, say it was old tile, but you were to go in and replace that and put laminate everywhere, nice wood plank laminate, and you put that everywhere. Are you going to get that back in your resale value? And the comp should tell you that. Or are you going to get that back in what you're able to rent the property for? Or is it going to get off the market? You're going to sell it faster or rent it much faster by doing that. So these are things that you really want to go through and make sure that you are doing what you have to do, but also taking care of the things you probably should be doing. And if any, having some of those wow factors in there. Um, the minimum effective dose, take your meds, MEDs, minimum effective dose. Do not over rehab. Do not under rehab. You want to meet the comps. That's all you're trying to do. Meet the comps. If you're flipping a house, you're looking at the homes and you see the price points at where they're selling and they have these features, like you're trying to meet those comps. Maybe you have that one extra thing that just makes your house a little bit more special, but you don't need to exceed the comps. You don't have to exceed them. You just want to meet that. You're not living in the house. So don't worry about putting in a whole bunch of things that you would personally want. Meet the comps. That's all you have to do. Now, I want everyone to hear this. Put down the paintbrush. Put down the paintbrush. You're not a star on an HGTV house flipping show. You are a real estate entrepreneur, or at least like you're aspiring to be a real estate entrepreneur, an investor, a business owner. You're not a contractor. It may be tempting to like go do contracting work, go do some repairs, either because you're saving money or you think it's cool because you saw it on TV, but don't do it. You're going to make significantly more money spending your time finding another deal than you will be like painting walls or putting in flooring or whatever. So you really have to just change your mindset and start thinking about, you're thinking like a business owner, not a contractor. So and even if like carpentry or contracting, if that is your skill set and you really enjoy doing it, sure, you could do it. Like, if you had that skill set and you enjoy it, you could do that. Just know that it probably doesn't make business sense for you to do it. Just because you can, because you have the skill set and you actually like doing it, probably doesn't make business sense doing that. And going further, like even if you do have the skill set and you do enjoy it, but if you're not able to commit the time, like you're full time in this to go in and do that work, then it's probably a bad idea for you to do it as well, because now you're actually increasing risk, because it's going to take you a lot longer to do it than it would take for if you just hired the right contractor to do it. It's going to take you longer, and you have costs every single day that home is not on the market and not being sold, not being leased. There's a daily cost to you. So you're increasing your risk by doing contracting work. So just change your mindset, start thinking like a business owner, delegate those tasks, delegate the contracting tasks to skilled and dedicated contractors, high quality contractors that can do the job while you're looking for your next deal. Now, with anything like with your business and making investments, same thing with your rehab project, you should have goals. Like, makes sense, right? You should have goals. There's 3 primary goals that you need to set and track and manage. And it's budget. Now, this you should already have. You should have had this before you really ever even went under contract. But even after under contract, I meant before you closed, because you have your written itemized bid from your contractor, right? So you should have this part already set. And then also you have a 10% contingency in there for the, stuff that comes up, and stuff always comes up. So that part should be set. Quality, this part should be set too. The quality of finishes that you're putting into to a property. Obviously, a higher end property, the quality of fixtures and finishes and everything, it's going to be a lot higher than maybe a lower end rental where you don't necessarily need quartz countertops, and you might even be able to get away with carpet and old dingy tile on those kind of rentals. So you should have your quality and your budget already knocked out, and then also time. This should also already be determined in your written bid from your contractor. How long is the project going to take? Now, in general, we would estimate that every week, so every 7 days, we could knock out about $7,000 in work. So if a project, and it's about $1,000 a day. So if it was a $30,000 remodel, it would take us about 4 weeks, about a month. It's just a general rule. Kind of depends on the type of work that's being done, because some work takes a lot longer than others, like roof and HVAC. Those are very expensive items that you can knock out within like 2 days, sometimes 1 day, at least for HVAC. So it doesn't take those as long to do as compared to like sheetrock. Like if you're going to sheetrock large portions of the house, it takes a lot more time to do that. But you do need to have the goals. You need to know your budget. You need to know the quality, and then you need to know the time frame that it's going to take you. Rehabbing's all about planning and execution. You have to plan. And you've done most of that to this point. Like if you've gotten to this point and you've done what you're supposed to be doing, you should have a solid plan. Now, really, it's time to execute. The plan comes from the written itemized bid and your final scope of work, or SOW. You've determined your budget. You know the quality, the end product and the quality of that product, what it should look like, and you have your timeline already outlined. So when you do this properly, what ends up happening is fewer surprises and fewer headaches pop up. Surprises and headaches will pop up. Even if you have like a pretty cut and dry remodel, it's still sometimes little small things will pop up. It may not really be much of a headache. It's just little surprises here and there. Almost every project will have them, but fewer of them will happen, guarantee you, if you plan properly on the front end. Projects tend to finish more on time. They tend to finish on budget and definitely within the quality you're expecting. And ultimately, what that means is more money in your pocket. Now, going back to time, just to kind of point something else out, like things happen and surprises happen, and one of these surprises or whatever happens, that can impact your time. And weather can too. Like obviously, if it's raining, you can't go replace a roof. That may get delayed. Siding, exterior painting, things like that. You can't really do that in certain weather conditions. So there are things that can impact time that are not necessarily in your control and in the contractor's control. But in general, you have the timeline that, hey, if everything works as anticipated, then it should take about this amount of time. But ultimately, by doing proper planning on the front end and executing that plan very well, you make more money. Kind of no-brainer, right? In preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable, by General Dwight D. Eisenhower. So you have the plan. That's smart. You want to have them. And that's what he's saying here. Hey, planning is indispensable. But kind of like what Mike Tyson said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Things happen. And that's okay. You have the framework, and that's where you made all your decisions. It was based on this framework of what your project's supposed to look like. You did the planning. There are going to probably be adjustments that you're going to have to make along the way. And it really comes down to you and the contracting team, the contractor that you're hiring to help mitigate this. Now, characteristics of a good contractor. This is something we also went over in the estimating deals session. There are certain characteristics you want to look for. Now, I'm assuming here that you're probably going to be hiring a general contractor, especially if you're doing like your first remodel, the first few remodels. I highly recommend hiring a general contractor. If you have a full-time job, I recommend hiring a general contractor. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting in that seat, and it's a lot of work. So, characteristics of a good contractor. They manage the job, the entire job. They're managing the entire job from start to finish. They're very effectively and professionally handling problems that arise. Talked about that. Hey, look, problems are going to come up, and they're able to handle those, and they're able to communicate that. They have positive and responsive communication. Contractors, especially subcontractors, they, a lot of them have this weird thing about just going dark, and that's like the quickest way for me to never use you again is if you just go dark. If you're a contractor and it goes dark, I can get a hold of you. It's like it's one of my pet peeves. But a good contractor is going to have very effective communication and consistent communication. You're not going to have them go dark on you. They're going to let you know. So, especially when problems arise, that's when you get the call. That's when you get the text. The contractor saying, "Hey, this happened. Just letting you know." Now, they should also be making suggestions. Hey, this happened. Now, I recommend we do this, but we could also do this and this. What would you like to do? And they're usually putting the ball back in your court because you're in charge. It's your project, it's your money. Now, at this point, I'm usually going with the contractor's suggestion. A good contractor is going to steer you in the right direction, and they're giving you their expertise on what to do. And that expertise also kind of going down to offering suggestions on the product. Now, agreeable pricing and payments have to have that. You should have had that at this point, but the payments too, like letting you know exactly, hey, what the payment schedule is, so you're both on the same page, and you're not kind of like midway through and they're just asking you for a check that's like just whenever. Like you only want to give payments first, 50% down upfront. Nah, don't do that. That's a surefire way to be out a lot of money if you're doing that with contractors. Small upfront, maybe to get the job going. I typically like the pricing here with where the contractor was taking care of material and labor. So yeah, if they're fronting that cost up front, you're probably going to need to give them a deposit, no more than 30%, maybe 20%. Usually what I would like, give them a small deposit, and then after the first day or the first couple days, then I would continue up to that 20 or 30%. That way, hey, they're invested, you're invested. And then from that point, having a payment schedule that's based on completion. But back on the communication and suggestions on the product, like this is where the contractor, they should be making these suggestions. I had a call with a contractor recently. He was on a repair for a water heater. And I was like, hey, look, is this a safety issue? They said, no. I said, okay, well, what can we do? And they were like, well, we could do this or we could do this. I'm like, all right, well, based on your opinion, it's not a safety issue. I think we'll go with your suggestion. So they should be able to offer you those things, and those things, if they're always recommended, and we'll just replace and do it, just replace it, just replace it. Might be reason to question, but good contractors should be making giving you good suggestions on what is a realistic expectation, or what you might need to do to mitigate a certain problem or to achieve your goal ultimately. Being able to establish trust. Now, trust but verify. That's my philosophy. I'm naturally trusting, but I also want to verify that along the way and maintain that trust. So you need to be able to have a strong working relationship, and that is going to require some trust. But again, it's trust but verify. The entire scope of work is defined. Keeping and establishing and keeping timelines. This goes back to the goal time. Now, timelines may change depending on if certain things get interrupted, but also with communication, if those timelines get interrupted, I want to know about it up front. So if they're letting me know, hey, we should be doing the plumbing and HVAC final on Friday, and then come Friday, I realize, hey, like no one's here. What's going on? And I didn't know about that. That's going to be concerning to me. But when the contractor lets me know, hey, just letting you know, we ran into a snag, or HVAC guy, I don't know, he got a flat in his truck or his van broke down, so he's not going to get here until Saturday or first thing Monday. Like, I just want to know that up front. Permits and inspections, they should be able to not only pull permits, but be there for the inspections. And then, of course, quality. They're doing high quality work for what you're paying for. Now, the question is to GC or not to GC. So again, I recommend hiring a general contractor. It's a lot easier, especially if you don't have that skill set, you don't have the time dedicated to be a general contractor. Just hire a general contractor. If you do have the skill set and you enjoy doing it, then yeah, maybe you could do it. But even still, it's probably not in your best interest. Just kind of going back to thinking like a business owner. Now, never trust contractors. I know I mentioned before, like you have to have a working level of trust, and that's true. But again, trust but verify. When I'm talking about trust with a contractor, I've definitely been burned by some contractors, but here's the reality. They don't trust you either. And that's because they've been burned by investors. They've had investors not give them their last check, or investors that ran out, and usually because the investor didn't budget correctly and they ran out of money. So they don't have the money to pay the contractor. So they're skeptical of you too, even if you're skeptical of them. Don't trust up front, or at least you can trust but verify. And that really is going to be a time thing. You should be able to, over time, definitely learn to trust each other. But it always comes with verification. And even after months and multiple projects or years of work, you still have to, show leadership and strong management to where you're managing the projects, because their situation changes. And the last thing that you want is their situation to change and it directly affect your pocketbook in the negative side, because something happened with them and you're going to end up paying for that mistake if you're not managing the projects correctly. So don't ever fully trust them. Trust but verify. Just know that they also probably don't trust you either. Require itemized contracts and bids. Again, we've talked about this, where you're getting a full scope of work that itemizes every single thing that they're going to be doing. The last thing, the worst kind of bid you could ever have, is just an email or text, "Hey, I can do this for 30,000." Like you can do what for 30,000? If it's not itemized, you can bet that you're not on the same page, and it's going to cause for arguments and confusion later on. Okay, now it's time to execute. Let's walk through the 5 phases of a rehab. We got phase 1. So you close on the property. First thing you need to do is turn on utilities. Get utilities on your name. Contractors hate it when they go to the when they go to the job site and there's no water and no electricity. It's kind of hard for them to work without water and electricity. Now, if it was like a complete rebuild, or if you demo the property, or there's some more hard, like you have to put in new utility lines, and that's a little different. But ultimately, you need to get utilities on as soon as possible for the contractors to do the work. Proper permits, pull those. Then foundation work. Foundation work really needs to be done before anything else, because it, especially if it's a lot, depending on the level of foundation work, it affects a lot of other things, including the roof. Like, you don't want to do the roof before foundation work is done. Demo. Now, you could do demo before foundation, because that's really just removing things. So that part could be done in advance. Framing, and pest control. So basically, foundation is going to be done before pretty much everything, except for maybe utilities, pulling permits, and then framing and pest control, you definitely want to do, of course, after foundation. Now, with pest control, I put this here. This really, like, what pops in my head here is not just general pest control. I typically didn't do that unless there was a need. So what I'm talking about here is termites, bed bugs, like rodent, infestations or whatever. If you got raccoons in the roof, things like that. That's when you want to have this done. You definitely don't want to have bed bugs in the house, and then you figure that out later after you've done a lot of other stuff. All right. Phase 2, electrical, plumbing, and HVAC. This is your rough-in stuff. So rewiring, putting in like a new panels and stuff like that. Drywall, sheetrock, now your windows. Now, I typically did not replace entire windows. I'd usually, like, if there's a broken pane, I would replace the pane. Your carpentry work, tub, shower, tile. Now, tile, whether it's backsplash or flooring, you could do that in phase 2. I'll talk more about flooring later on, but tile work specifically is pretty messy. So doing it in phase 2, I think, is okay. And this really is because, like, if tile gets wet, like, you're not really going to damage it. If you get spill stuff on tile, it can typically clean up pretty well. Now, you still should be covering tile, putting plastic over it, but it's pretty durable. Unlike spilling paint all over wood flooring, that's not good. Siding and exterior repairs, also here in phase 2. Now, phase 3. Now we're starting to put in some finishes. We got our countertop, backsplash for blowing in insulation, garage doors, gutters. Typically, if it had damaged gutters, I'd just remove them. I don't think there's any time that I've ever replaced gutters. There may have been 1 or 2, but usually I would just remove them. And then painting the interior, exterior. Painting. So this is when everything really slows down, because it's a process, and there's not really a lot of things that can be done while the house is being painted. And you definitely don't want to damage your paint job, because other contractors are doing other things. It's getting dust everywhere. So when you get to the painting process, just know that things tend to like slow to a crawl for 2, 3, 4 days or so. And it can be a little frustrating, but the great thing is once painting's done, now you're getting into phase four and the house starts to come alive here because you're adding the fixtures, you're adding the flooring. Now, flooring here, this is your wood, your laminate, your carpet. You're putting in appliance packages, mirrors and glass work, like shower glass, seamless glass, and then your electrical, plumbing, HVAC final. So this is actually the HVAC units or electrical outlets and wall plates, things like that. And then last, phase five. These are really the final touches: exterior landscaping, mulch, trimming and stuff like that. Now, a lot of the stuff, I would do if it was like large brush and a whole bunch of trash and stuff that I did with demo. But the final landscaping, this is where I'm putting in the mulch, adding some color pop to it, maybe retrimming trees if that was necessary. Final punch list items, trash removal, final cleaning, and then staging. Now, on the punch list, things can kind of go, it seems like this slows down here too. Some contractors like to do final cleaning, then do a final walkthrough because it's easier to see what punch list items are needed when it's clean. And then afterwards they'll do a final, a clean again. So whether you're just doing one or you're doing a kind of a two-stage clean, doesn't really matter. But ultimately, the final punch list, things can seem like it crawls here. And this is really where it takes a lot of work and management from you because the contractor's off, like they've made most of their money now. And they should not have been paid completely yet. That final check does not happen to the contractor until they've given you the keys. They're done. There's nothing else they need to come back for. That's when they get their final check. But at this point, they have made a large percentage of their money. There may only be like 10% left here. Most of their guys that are on other projects now. Things can slow down here. You have to stay on the project to see it all the way through. Because the final punch list items, it's just a few things, but if you don't manage it right, this 2-day process can be 5 or 6 days. And the last thing you want is when you were planning on putting it on the market, that get delayed a whole week just because you weren't on the contractors making sure that they were doing what they were supposed to be doing in the time frame they're supposed to be doing. All right, case study. This house, Willow Oak. We bought this as a rental property, and you're gonna love some of the pictures. So I'll show you in a minute. It was one of the I've flipped 200 houses or so, and that means I've probably walked 500, 600, 700 houses. I don't even know the count of that number. This house is, I think, ranked number one as far as one of the messiest, nastiest houses that I've ever walked in. It was a hoarder house. Like, it was actually hard to walk through. I put a video on TikTok a while back, but this is a view of the front when we bought it. Like the front didn't look that bad. Overgrown bushes. We had to do some tree trimming. Had some trash out front, and you can see that swing set, kind of old swing set. So what we ended up doing, not a lot. Did trim the bushes a little bit. That swing set's still there. We did remove it after this picture was taken. Put some mulch. We painted the exterior siding and fascia, and then did our customary red door. Not a lot was needed as far as on the exterior of the house itself. Most of the exterior work for this house was just the yard itself. This is a picture of the backyard. It was a jungle. There was a ton of trash back here. You can't see it in this picture, but there was actually an old abandoned car in the back. Thankfully, the previous owner ended up picking that up, so we didn't have to have it towed, but it was a mess. Got all that cleaned up. The deck had some rotten boards. All we really did there was we replaced the rotten boards. We didn't go rebuild the whole deck. It wasn't necessary to do that. We replaced the rotten boards, clean up the yard, trim the bushes, clean everything up where it looked nice and fresh for the neighborhood. Now, this is where the real transition, you can really see it. So the house flooded, but we didn't know that. Like, walking through the home, you would not have been able to tell that. I think it took on maybe an inch of water, half an inch, whatever it was. It was a small amount, and I don't know if they set off a tornado inside the house after that point or what. But no one had lived there for a long time, and it was just a absolute mess. Now, anytime there's water damage, you have to replace pretty much everything. So replacing cabinets, typically don't do that if I can avoid it. We'll just replace the doors and drawers, and I'll put new pulls on them. But when there's water damage, like especially like a flood, you kind of have to, because water gets behind there, and like you just have to replace the whole thing. So that's what we did here. We replaced the cabinets, put some nice pulls on, and had a stainless appliance package, laminate flooring, and lighting, and we did some upgraded kind of like subway tile backsplash here. This is the living room. You can kind of tell a little bit more on how much of a hoarder house this was, or this just trashed out house. So we typically, if we're replacing flooring in the main areas, most of the time, unless it just had like really good tile in a certain part, like the kitchen, we usually just replaced everything on the downstairs area with the wood style laminate, like the laminate plank. And it looks really good. It looks open. It's fresh. It looks modern. And that's what we did here. Fresh paint. And also, this is a good point, and it goes into the scope of work. Most of our line items were pretty much the same. Like, we had one style of laminate that we used. We had really two styles of, really, there was kind of two styles of most things. It ultimately depended on, are we going on a beige style, or are we going on a gray style theme? So depending on if we were going more beige or more gray, that would dictate on how light or dark we want certain other things, like the flooring and maybe fixtures. So here, ultimately, one of the main things we want to do is make sure everything is open. It looks and feels very open, very bright. So making sure there was plenty of lighting. We always use like very high energy bulbs to give it extra light, especially if there's not enough natural light that comes in the home. Here's another case study, Hammerwood. You're actually going to see in a minute. I'll talk more about the lighting because it really plays in with this case study. So on the exterior here, again, we didn't have to do a lot. You can tell a little bit more on the landscaping part. We basically, right when the project's done, remember how I mentioned landscaping in phase 5, we would put black mulch, and depending on the season, we'd put flowers or some type of plants with color, and it gives it that pop. It really gives it a good curb appeal. It pops in pictures, but it's also that good curb appeal when prospective tenants or buyers for the property, when they come view it, it looks really nice and it looks inviting. So that's what we did here. Depending on the season that your project and when you're putting it on the market, may not be able to do plants, but you can pretty much always do black mulch. So here we didn't do a lot to the exterior other than just kind of general cosmetics. I don't even know if we painted the exterior on this one. We did clean the roof and trim the trees because there was a lot of like debris in the trees or debris on the roof from the trees. Here's the interior. Now, this house, it was very dark. It didn't have a lot of natural light from windows, but beyond that, it also just didn't have a lot of lighting. There weren't a lot of fixtures, and what few fixtures they had were lamps. It was dark and dingy. So what we ended up doing is we put in a lot more lights, like can lights in the ceiling to open it up. And then we used some high energy bulbs to brighten it up as much as possible. You can tell that's a night and day difference between this home. Now, the flooring here, so it's a laminate plank flooring or glue down. And you can tell, if you look closely, you can tell some of the planks seem like they're like, I don't know the right term. They're kind of peeking up, not peeling per se, but they're definitely not flush. It doesn't look brand new. That was a question here. So I was going through the must should can, and must I repair this flooring? It was a nice laminate flooring. It didn't have any like obvious blemishes. It wasn't like damaged, although I mean you see some of that peeking, but it was still, you kind of had to look for it to really see it. So must I replace that? Based on the comps, the answer was no. Now, should I replace it? Could have gone either way. Ultimately, I came up with the answer of no. Based on the comps, this flooring is in really good condition. So based on the price point, the comps that we're trying to meet, I didn't necessarily need to replace that. Now, if it was a high-end flip, yeah, probably would have, just because it would have, like, for those types of buyers, they're not going to want to see that. But for this home in this market, that wasn't that much of an issue. But what was very important is making sure that it was very light, very bright, very open, and we made that happen. Here's a view of the kitchen. You can tell here it's got the laminate or formica countertops, and also backsplash. It's missing one of the cabinet, like the blank doors or drawers. Also, it's kind of dark and dingy. It had some fluorescent lighting in here, definitely very dated. So what we ended up doing is not replacing all the cabinets, but we did paint them. We got, I think we might have gotten, I don't even know if we did new doors. We may have just painted the whole thing, and put new pulls on. And we kept the laminate or formica countertops. It goes back to that question: must we replace the countertops? The countertops were in really good condition. There was no reason to replace them. Now, should we replace them? There obviously was, there would have been a benefit to putting in granite. It would have looked a lot nicer, but would we have gotten the ROI that we would need to make that justifiable? And the answer we came up with, based on the comps, was no, we wouldn't. It didn't make sense for this particular house in this market. So we kept the countertops, and we just made sure that we put some extra lighting in to make it brighter. So you can see there's 2 cans here. I think there's one more right above where the camera is, and it made it look a lot brighter, a lot more open, even though the hallway here in this particular kitchen is relatively narrow. So it felt kind of small, but because it's brighter and we have the white countertops, or the white cabinets, it made it feel a little bit more open than it was. Here's the master or primary bedroom looking into the primary bathroom. Now, you can tell here, again, back to very, very dark and dingy. Same thing here. But also, this primary bathroom had 2 pedestal vanities, or pedestal sinks. And you can tell here that there's no door that separates the bedroom from the bathroom. There is a door that separates, like, where the toilet is, but not the actual sink area itself. And now the question I had was, should or must I replace that? And the answer was no, I don't have to do that. Should I? The answer we came up with, yes, we probably should. I'll show you that in a second. But when it came down to what can we do, we didn't necessarily have to. We didn't, like, must we replace those pedestals? No, they were in good condition. Should we? Yeah, probably. Ultimately, that was the one thing that we put into this home that gave it a little bit extra wow factor, because we did put granite in here. We gave it a nice cabinet, dual vanity cabinet with new mirrors, much better lighting, and we closed off the wall. It was an open wall. We closed it off and made an entry into this area. So now there was some privacy for someone who wanted to be in there and, brushing their teeth in the morning while the other person sleeps. Knowing that that would be a concern for some buyers, although for a must, it wasn't a must, but should we do it? Yeah, we thought so, and we did that, and I think it was a good decision. Also, you can tell, much brighter than the original picture, put in some new lights, which, if I recall correctly, put in some of the lighting in this particular room was a little complex, the way the roof line was, but we wanted to do that. We knew we should do that because it was going to make it feel brighter, and bright and open makes things feel bigger, and that's always a good thing and helps things sell. All right. Wrapping up, effective construction management really comes down to 4 things. You have to have clear expectations. This is your planning, but this is expectations both on yourself, and, like, you have your expectations with the project and budget, quality, and time. And that needs to be clearly communicated to your contractor. And that way you're both on the same page with what the budget should be, with the quality that should be in the various things that you're doing for the property. By quality, I'm not necessarily talking about workmanship, because that should always be good quality. Like, whatever they're doing, they need to be doing well, but also the quality of the actual finishes that you're putting in. And then time. You need to have set those clear expectations from the beginning. Make sure that the contractor understands those, communicate that, and continue the communication all the way through the project, and show leadership. You have to show leadership and firm management, which is going to require. This is another reason why I'm saying, like, use contractors, especially if you have a full-time job. You have to manage the contractor too. You're having to manage the manager. So that's going to require that you need to show up on the job site every single day, or at worst every other day. Especially with new contractors, you have to do that. You have to show the leadership, show them that you're very serious about your business. You're serious about this project. You have clear expectations. They understand those expectations. You have an agreement on how you're going to be able to solve the various problems, how you're going to, finish the project, and what that's going to look like. You're communicating along the way, and you're showing leadership and management, knowing that, hey, you're not just giving them the keys and saying, hey, hand it back to me when they're done. That's a good way to lose a lot of money. You need to be on your contractor, communicating and making sure that you're both on the same page all the way through the project. And when there's times when it may happen, when it seems like they're either slacking, they're falling off, that you're calling them out. You're asking them, and you're on them, like, trying to figure out, hey, what's going on? I know you said the HVAC was going to be here on a Friday. They're not here. I didn't hear anything. What's going on? They should be able to explain what that is, but I want them to come to me. I don't want to have to chase them down for that information. And you need to make that clear. Okay, when this happens, please communicate that with me. You need to let me know. I wouldn't have come all the way out here to check that out if I knew they weren't even going to be here. And, that took up an extra hour and a half of my time. You need to have that respect. And if you do that and you show them that you're serious about your business, you're serious about the project, they'll typically, good ones, they're going to show you the same level of respect. Now, they're people. Like, you're not running contractors with with like an iron fist. They're people. When you show each other a level of respect, things get done. They'll get done well. And over time, you should have a really strong, healthy relationship where you can trust. You still trust but verify, but you can trust each other to ultimately see these projects through and make a lot of money together. And then last, finish strong. You got to finish strong. And we're showing strong leadership in management, and you're on top of things, and you're making sure they're on top of things. You will finish stronger, but you definitely want to finish strong. Things can slow down. And when you're getting to that final punch list item, stay on top of it. Make sure everything gets done all the way to the point to where you actually have the property on the market to sell or lease or whatever you're doing. All right. And last, as a real estate investor, especially if you're freshly remodeling a home, like with a freshly remodeled home, just think about the advantage you have on the market. When you put a home in the market, whether it's for sale or for rent, your home, depending on the level of remodel, it looks typically a lot better than any other home on the market, especially homes that have been lived in. You have a really good advantage on the market, because when buyers walk in, like, for a home with the same, like, very similar quality and function and size, like, yours has the leg up, because a home that's been lived in looks lived in. Even if it's relatively upgraded, it still has the natural wear and tear that a home that has been lived in would have. Yours doesn't necessarily have that, depending on the level of remodel you did. It's going to have the advantage. The better looking home wins, and this can be a reason why we have the must, we have the should, and the can. The can being the one or two extra splashes. They don't have to be expensive, and a lot of times they don't. They're not expensive, but the one or two extra little wow factors that you might want to put in to give it just that extra edge to hit your margins. That can be a good reason to do that. But ultimately, the better looking home wins. And as a freshly remodeled home, and as an investor putting that home in the market, you have that advantage. And it's really nice to have, because it helps you get a better price typically, and also I say better price when you price it well. You still have to price it well. and then typically sells faster than other homes on the market too. So that wraps up the rehabbing part of this masterclass. Next up is income generation. We're going to be talking about making money, right? How to make money and make sure every deal is profitable, especially when you're using multiple exit strategies to minimize risk and maximize profit. So you don't want to miss it. I look forward to seeing you then.